Welcome to Coffee with the Pastors, the Christmas edition. I don't know what happened to Dan and Kevin, but I am all decked out here for Christmas,
You look great, Kathy. Wow.
Yeah, it took me a while to find this sweater. Actually, I've gone a little crazy outside with the nice weather, the 70 degrees, and thinking that one way that I can spread a little cheer this year is just to light up the neighborhood. So I don't know what else I'm going to do for Christmas, but I've got that much that I'm excited about. Did you guys do anything for your outside decorating when we had those nice days?
Not yet, but we've certainly talked about, somebody made the comment, a friend of ours, there will be no judging of those who put up Christmas decorations early this year. And I thought that's really good,
Yeah.
with everything going on, if somebody wants to spread a little more light and joy and hope right now, go for it. Let's do it, So yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that sweater's phenomenal, by the way. That's just a fantastic sweater.
It's the wildest one I could find, yeah.
I razzed a few Trinity members in our neighborhood that were putting up their lights when it was 70 plus degrees. And I figured there's probably some law against that, but I was not stupid enough not to do it along with them. So yeah, we got out, the lights are out. They're not on yet, but I got a cool set of LED lights that I can change colors on. So they're going to be Thanksgiving colors this week. And then they'll change to Christmas or Advent. I don't know. We'll play with them.
Nice. That is very cool. Wow. Yeah. No, I used to be a nothing for Christmas until after Thanksgiving, but we're not having anybody for Thanksgiving. So I'm going, why not? Right? we need all the cheer we can get this year. So, but anyway, I've got my Christmas coffee mug. What I'm missing, I think, is, some Sandbachel or Krummkake or Llefse. And, I'm excited that we're going to do a little bit of a Scandanavian bake sale on December 18th and 19th, so we can get some of those goodies as well as the Llefse. And I thought it was very cool that we were getting Llefse from the Nordic Fest. So it's hand-rolled Llefse that is used at the Nordic Fest in Decorah. I had no idea how very special this Llefse is that we are getting. So Pastor Kevin, you need to tell us about this Llefse that's going to be at the Scandinavian bake sale.
Well, I've actually been to the factory back when it was the old factory. They had a fire and they've rebuilt, but this was actually a factory in the town that my first call was in, Blair, Wisconsin. And every year, the church there would do a lutefisk dinner on the first Saturday in November. I think the biggest year we had served a little over 1,600 people in a town of 1,000 members.
Wow.
People came from all over, but we couldn't roll Llefse for that many people. So we actually got it from Countryside Llefse. Actually you can see I've got a piece of dried cod as a commemoration for all my work at those lutefisk dinners. It's not lutefisk yet because it hasn't been soaked in lye, but it could be. It still could be.
Still?
You could take it off that wood board and it would still be good, huh?
Still make it into fresh lutefisk.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I'll have to watch and see if it disappears.
Yeah, well, I probably shouldn't say that because somebody from the church will come and get it for the lutefisk dinner the next time we have one.
Well, it is, not that long before we're going to be celebrating Christmas. Advent starts on the 27th, 29th, 29th of November. So we don't get that little break in between Thanksgiving and the beginning of Advent. It's all right sweeping together. And, our theme that we are going to have for Advent is hope. And I just think that that's such a wonderful theme. I had the women's Bible study here, and one of the questions I asked was, where do you find hope in this particular season? And there was almost like there was this collective sigh, like, hope. Oh, yeah. We are all wanting hope, and I think it's so important to be encouraging folks. So we've got this very nice devotional, similar to the one that we had at Lent, Living Well Through Advent 2020, and it's practicing hope with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. So for those folks, these are available outside the church. They're also available. You can sign up for the daily email devotion, or you can go and get the information from the November newsletter and download the PDF of that devotional. But I'm finding that it's got a lot of good stuff in there, talking about hope and how it's, just not a feeling or wishful thinking. There's a lot more substance to it. It can be a decision for us, and certainly that our grounding is in God and all of that. So looking forward to that. We'll talk about that on the Sundays in worship, but also on Wednesdays, right? We're going to be doing midweek on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. We'll be having Holden evening prayer, and then some scripture and reflection in those as well. So anything I'm missing about Advent that we should talk about?
Just at those midweek services, at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays, they're going to, of course, be on our YouTube and Facebook page at 5. They'll go up at 5 and then be there after that. But it'll also be on KCMR live at 5 o'clock as well, for those that like to listen on the radio. So those are some great places to catch those midweek services.
That's actually kind of a new thing, right? Because we don't usually have those Advent services. That's been part of our Wednesday Night Alive, but not been out on KCMR. That's great.
Yeah. KCMR has just been really great, as we've talked about both Advent and Christmas, saying, boy, especially now in times when people aren't able to go to worship, how do we make sure that worship is coming to them and they're able to connect? And so they've been a great partner here, especially. I mean, they always have been, but especially now, it's been cool to see.
Well, and Holden's always such a beautiful service, even just to listen to, if you don't have, all of the words to sing along. It's a lovely musical piece that I think just sets a nice tone for Advent, and dark and light and all of that.
Yeah, and a lot of Lutheran churches have used Holden evening prayer in Lent because it's a nice Vespers, a nice evening prayer service. It's really written for Advent, and the Magnificat that's in the middle, right, is Mary's song of singing thanks for this promise of a child. And there's something about it that's really special when you do it in December, in this early dark evenings of December. So. Yeah.
Well, and I do think that in the midst of all these losses, there are going to be some really very beautiful, special things that are going to happen, including what we're going to do for Christmas. So, Pastor Dan, do you want to maybe kick off some of that conversation for us about what's going to happen at Christmas?
Yeah, so obviously we know this Christmas is going to be different than what we're used to. At Trinity, we typically have, 4 Christmas Eve services of good size, a Christmas Day service, lots of people from out of town, lots of visitors. There's a kind of a certain energy with that I think we all look forward to, the beauty of the decorations and the music and all of that. And I think we all recognize this year it's going to be a little bit different. And so we've really been thinking as a staff of how do we help each other connect to that and still be able to worship and celebrate what Christmas is about, even though we know we can't be together in the room. And I think out of those conversations, one of the things we realized actually a while back was even if we were able to do some in-person worship with the restrictions that we would have to do, it would be difficult to do it in the way that we're used to and that we would appreciate. Being distanced and being masked, not being able to sing would be a real challenge to make that Christmas experience what we want it to be. So we started talking pretty early on about how we could do something that would be really meaningful online and on the radio for Christmas that would allow everyone who wanted to be a part of that to be able to experience all of the music and the carols and the beauty of the season, and also reach those that are joining us now that are beyond our walls. We have a number of folks that are connecting with us in worship that would not have been able to come in person anyway, and so we wanted to think about them. And so for all of those reasons, and I think now in hindsight is, we're experiencing changes in the trends locally that are really shutting down a lot of gatherings, even smaller gatherings. I'm really kind of excited actually for what we're talking about for our Christmas services. A couple of different opportunities to be able to worship online and on radio, unique experiences that are really designed toward worshiping in our homes together, but in our homes. So if you've got loved ones in your household, this is the year to really think about, all right, when are we going to worship for Christmas? When is that going to happen? And how are we going to connect with these services, whether they're when they are released or after that, or if you have loved ones or friends that live apart from you, maybe even on the other side of the country. How do you set up a way for you to worship together, so to speak, by saying, I'm going to attend the 4:00 service, or I'm going to attend the 7:30 service, and would you go with me? And online by worshiping from where you're at, and then maybe afterwards we connect by phone or we connect by video conference like we would have outside. And so those are some things that we really want to lift up and encourage people as we talk about the details of these services, and we're going to kind of go through them, right, and talk about what makes each of the services unique when they're happening, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it could be really exciting. I did a webinar while I was on sabbatical with this church that was talking about how they do candle lighting, and how meaningful that is as a part of their church. And I went, well, yeah, absolutely, and how you lift up the candle for Silent Night, and how beautiful. And they were going to be encouraging people to take their candles out into the neighborhood and sing and lift their candle up, because this year Christmas isn't contained in the church. Christmas is going out to our communities and spreading that good news. And I thought, you know what, we could do that almost better this way. I can imagine your neighborhood, Pastor Dan, you get out on 6 bells, with the Methodist Church and see each other. I could see the neighborhood coming together and saying, let's go out and lift our candles too at whatever hour.
Yeah.
There are some cool things that could happen in groups of folks or communities, safely distanced but participatory in our homes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, if we want to talk about some of the individual services, Pastor Kevin, you're kind of helping shape the early service. You want to talk a little bit about the early service, when it's happening, some of the details of what it involves?
Yeah, well, we're still kind of in the early planning stages, and so we're still working out some of the details. But a couple things. One is that's been traditionally our family service. We've built it as our, kind of a time for families to come, especially with younger kids, and all the excitement and energy around that. And so we wanted to make it kind of a multi-generational piece, and then also aware that we're not able to do our traditional Sunday school Christmas program this year. And that has been a wonderful place for children to tell the story to the congregation. And I think that's been kind of one of the big pieces of that tradition in the Sunday school program, isn't just seeing your kid up front, but actually letting the kids tell the story to the adults. And so we're working on some ways to recruit some of our Sunday school kids to actually tell that story in a very creative way. And hopefully that'll happen. But then to also, in our thinking and in our worship, be thinking about some ways to celebrate at home, with giving of gifts, with telling the story, reading the story over again in different ways. And just thinking about how to do Christmas in our homes, maybe even extended beyond our homes as family isn't able to travel like normal, and just to kind of explore some of that and give some options. And I think the other nice piece about this is that we're kind of designing it so that it works both online for Christmas Eve at 4 o'clock, but then it will be the Christmas Day service on KCMR the following day. So it's really a multi-generational. We're going to have a lot of singing of the kind of those very traditional Christmas carols and hymns that we all love. And for me, that was the thing that would have been missing by doing it in person, is after having been to one of our Saturday night services and just hearing a group perform some special music, which has been great. But at the same time, I just could not imagine sitting in a sanctuary on a Christmas Eve and not singing.
Yeah.
So this way we're gonna have the songs and the sing, and so you'll be able to sing along at home if you'd like to, or listen as you feel comfortable. And we're also going to have communion. I think that's been an important part of our Christmas tradition at most of our services. So we'll be giving some instructions about how to do communion in home, and just sharing that meal as part of our Christmas feast.
I love that plan. I think the tradition of the late afternoon, early evening services has always been, like you said, kind of multi-generational. We know we've had a lot of kids that have attended the 4 o'clock and 5:30 services in past years, and the fact that we're going to, even though we can't be together, bring the kids in to be a significant part of the telling of the story for that 4 o'clock service, I think is really, really cool, and hopefully will be something that families will be able to gather around. Yeah. Families that have kids at home in their own kind of Christmas Eve schedule this year, to be able to connect with it either at 4 o'clock or maybe later in the evening if they want to go find the service after it's gone up.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and if there's a lot of chaos and a lot of noise with the kids, it will feel just like the 4 o'clock and the 5:30 service, right?
Right. This is my favorite night to watch Pastor Kevin try to do a children's sermon with 60 kids.
So much energy.
They're all excited about opening presents when they get home.
That is a unique skill to pull off in that setting, in that way.
And that I've had enough Christmas candy and cookies and sugar that
Right.
all on the parents this year.
Just like surfing. You just got to kind of stay on top of the energy wave.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the evening service this year, typically we take a break in our schedule and we come back at 10 o'clock, 10:30 for our traditional candlelight. Because we're going to be online this year, we thought it might be worthwhile to move that up. And so with the later service, what we're planning to do is to take what is our traditional candlelight service that happens at 10 o'clock, 10:30. The service typically starts at 10:30. The musical prelude at 10. We're moving that up this year to go 7 o'clock, 7:30. So we'll still do a half an hour musical prelude like we've always done on Christmas Eve, but it'll all be brought together beforehand. It'll be recorded in ways that can let people do that safely, and then we'll bring it together for that half an hour musical prelude. And then at 7:30, we'll start our traditional candlelight service, which is going to look a lot like what we typically do on Christmas Eve. I think our sense, was for a lot of our people, that's a service that there's some comfort in doing it the same every year, and there are aspects of it that are just fine. And so I think we're going to try to do that service just like we typically would in the sanctuary, and with all of those pieces that we've come to enjoy, the light and the dark, the candle lighting at the end. Certainly communion will be a part of that as well. And so kind of like in the earlier service, we're going to invite people to gather some items at home in order to do that. Well, if you've got bread and wine or grape juice, to gather that for communion. Or if you want to come and get the prepackaged communion kits, you'll be able to come and get those in the weeks leading up to Christmas at church. For that late service, where we're going to do candle lighting, we're also going to invite people to gather candles for that lighting that happens during the singing of Silent Night. And again, I think if people prefer, we're going to make candles available at church for people to come and get those and take them home before Christmas Eve if they'd like to do that. And I love the idea, Kathy, what you said about taking the candle out in the neighborhood. I think we're going to see how the weather looks that night, you know, knowing that Iowa can be unpredictable, but to do something really meaningful with that light and darkness at that late service, and to think about how we really do carry that promise and that hope of Christ, God coming to be with us, particularly in difficult or dark times, and how we carry that out of the world is an image we're going to want to play with and do some meaningful things around on that night. So I really look forward to that service. I look forward to both of them. I think they're going to be two very unique special services that'll hopefully be memorable in years to come as well.
Well, it sounds like Matt's really putting a lot of effort into, you know, some special music there for especially the prelude and that traditional service. I know he's excited about some of the pieces that he's working on for that. So that should be fun as well.
Yeah, he continues to do, I think, just great work in figuring out creative ways to try to get people in places where they can still share their gifts, to have people come together in safe ways to still make music, and using technology to be able to bring that to the masses. It's really it's been great to see, and a real gift to us as a congregation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be a beautiful Christmas in its own kind of way. And, you know, I do like the idea of Christmas in our homes is really where so much of this happens anyway. And then to be able to share it with others in creative ways. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I suppose I could talk a little bit too about after Christmas, December 27th, that Sunday. In a few years, we've had the last Sunday of December be the 5th Sunday of the month, when we typically would have our incorporate our service of worship or healing into worship. And it's not a 5th Sunday, but gosh, I think for the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, we really have an opportunity to be intentional about thinking about what that means for us, to seek God's healing in the midst of it. So I think that's what that December 27th service is going to be. It's going to be about healing and new beginnings. We're going to probably forego some of the traditional liturgy and be more intentional with some of the things that we do around healing and talking about grief and loss, about illness, about the state of our country, all those places where we might be sensing a need for healing, as well as I think just an emphasis on mental health and the toll that this year has taken on all of us, and normalizing what that is for all of us to deal with that and to move forward through the winter and through more potential isolation from people, and so to talk also intentionally about mental health. And so we've got Norma Cook-Everest, who is going to be our guest speaker, and Becky, our parish nurse, and I are kind of working on shaping that service, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get some of the hospitality ambassadors involved in it as well. So a nice way, hopefully, to end up this very strange year, and to take that theme of hope that we started with in Advent and just move it through and carry it into the next year. So that's about all I know for what's happening, but.
And I love that emphasis, I think, on healing and mental health. You know, I think, like we were talking about before the pandemic, just how important it is to be able to name and talk about some of those challenges that really a lot of us, if not all of us, face at different times in our lives and in different varying degrees, and how sometimes it's the isolation and the inability to talk about and name some of those things that makes it worse. So I love the idea of taking a weekend right in the heart of the holiday season and saying, we're going to think about this together and really look for the resources we have as people of faith, right, to handle some of these things and to keep on keeping on, so to speak. I think that'll be a beautiful focus right on the heels of Christmas.
I think on a regular Christmas, it's important to think about mental health after the end of the holidays.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's also just amazing to think back and say, you know, how God has been preparing the way in many ways for Trinity to be ready or to do the best that we can in this. You know, the initiative that we did long ago about mental health, who knew how much we were going to all need to be focusing on what that was all about. You know, the sanctuary updates. Who would have ever imagined that we would be doing Christmas virtually? I mean, but yet there's all these little building pieces that were playing out early on that we had no idea how God was putting into place some things that we would be using in this time. So, you know, I have to believe the same thing is true right now. What we're going through, the changes that we're experiencing, somehow these are building blocks for something else that we still don't know what it is, but will be happening, and God will be with us through it all. So.
It's so true. You can almost see the thread. I mean, in hindsight, of how God leads and shapes ministry, right? And so much we think that we're planning and doing, and we are a part of that, but there's something bigger and deeper, right, behind it that is often only apparent in hindsight. But yeah, definitely. I mean, our mission continues. It's changing how it happens, but the mission hasn't changed at all. That's really remarkable. That's a great thought.
Well, there you go. That great thought to end on then. So we will end there, and thanks everybody who's joining us for Coffee with the Pastors and getting some updates and some thoughts about Christmas, and we wish you a blessed holiday season. So goodbye to everybody.
Take care.
Bye.